set, hut, hut.
As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sound of Golden Blue football.
Almost heaven, West Virginia.
Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around about the 50 to 10 to 5. A touchdown with Virginia. He did it.
He did it. Patrick White. Touchdown, Tay Von Austin.
The Don Nehlen's Mountaineers enjoy walking in where angels feared to tread.
I think you think that these guys are going to fall over dead for you. Well, I got news for you. They're going to punch you right in the mouth. It's Mountaineer pride.
Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football. West Virginia football.
We've no doubt tonight they shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue. Not this night.
They've done it. They've done it. A perfect season. And the Mountaineers, for the first time in history, undefeated and untied.
Don Nehlen and his Mountaineers, for the second time, have finished a regular season with an unblemished mark.
Ain't no stopping
The Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another live stream here on the Country Roads webcast, February 27th edition, and got some pressers to talk about. I want to go back. I haven't had a chance to talk about Zach Alley's press conference from about a week ago now. Got some notes from that I took earlier today, and then Rich Rod just put up his most recent press conference, just uploaded, less than an hour ago onto the YouTube channels of all the, of course, WVU media sites that upload those. So looked at that one and took some notes on that one as well, so we'll go over some stuff that he detailed in that one, just provide you guys some spring football updates, and then other than that, we got to talk a little bit of hoops, do a recap of the most recent win for the Mountaineers, which seemingly really improves their tournament chances, feeling a lot better about those now after they picked up what I felt like was a must-win game. Got the victory in that game, one of the more important games of the season, and they got it done there. So that's big. And then we have some news, of course, from the university. I mentioned in the last live stream we had it reported who the next university president would be. Since then, we have the official announcement from WVU. We'll share that. And, of course, Ren Baker penned a letter to Mountaineer Nation as well. If you guys haven't had a chance to check that out, I want to share that here as well. And, of course, some comments from the other coaches on staff. They've been doing a good job. The West Virginia media team there sharing some videos of, Jack Bicknell, Zach Alley, and Travis Trickett. I'll share a couple of those here as well. Always like to recognize the WVU media team and the good job they do and try and share their work and highlight it here as well. So get into all that just as far as what's on the docket for the day for this stream here midday on February 27th. But I appreciate you guys tuning into this one that's live with me, or if you're watching the playback, that's cool too. But either way, if you hit the thumbs up button, that really helps a ton with that YouTube algorithm, helps this find more Mountaineer football fans like yourself. And if you are a fan of Mountaineer football, you should be subscribed here. We'll keep you up to date on what goes on throughout the offseason, keep you up to date on the players on the roster, something that's big now in the transfer portal era, just trying to figure out who's even on the roster. Will help you stay up to date with that, all the off-season happenings, and then, of course, in-season, keep you up to date with game previews, recaps, player grades, snap counts, depth chart updates, injury reports, all that good stuff. So if you can't get enough Mountaineer football content and stay informed, you should subscribe to us here on the Country Roads webcast, and we appreciate you guys doing that. And see some people in here live as well. Throw your thoughts in the chat there. I'll try and get some of your all's comments throughout here as well. But just want to give you guys a little brief update on what we got planned for the stream before we dive in. And with no further ado, let's just do just that. I'll give people a couple more minutes to roll in here before I talk about Rich Rod's press conference today. But let's go back. Let's talk a little bit about what Zach Alley had to say, because I think that that's really of note as well, because how much we've struggled defensively, not even under the previous coaching staff, really under the previous two coaching staffs, you could say. Defense has been an issue. Defense was a huge issue last season. So that's one reason West Virginia went out, got Zach Alley to be the highest paid assistant in WVU football history and stole him away from a Power 5 program, a borderline blue blood there at Oklahoma. So we're all interested to see what he brings to the table. What is his defense going to look like? What is his kind of mentality for that defense? And got some good info on that. So I took some notes from Zach Alley's press conference. This is back on February 20th, I believe he had this, but some of the things that I jotted down, he was asked about his scheme, and the way that he described it was extremely multiple, diverse, and athletic. Three things that I think sound great there. In my opinion, he also said the past 2 years, his defenses have been top 5 in the nation in blitz percentage, which that'll be a welcome change for us as well. I think it's probably been since Tony Gibson when somebody was aggressive on the West Virginia defense, sending pressure, and it seems like that will be a staple of the Zach Alley defense, and that really got me excited. And the quote that he used, trying to emphasize that was that he's always heard that pressure breaks pipes, and I love that adage right there and the way that he's planning to attack offenses. Asked a little bit about, 3 down versus 4 down. He said not only will they use both 3 and 4 down fronts, but they'll also shift in and out of those looks even in the middle of a series. That's how much they try and stay multiple, not even throughout the game, but even week to week when you look at this defense, he said it's going to look different. They hang their hat on being a difficult defense for opposing offenses to prepare for because you never know what you're going to get. So to me, that's super exciting because that sounds like they're not be able to get a pin on what we're doing like they have been able to in years past. They may game plan for something they've seen on tape, and we're going to come out on Saturday and show something that we haven't even put on tape yet, which I really love the way that Zach Alley sounds like he's going to scheme that up. He said that they'll adapt the scheme to fit the personnel strengths, which is good. No more square peg in a round hole. I think we had issues of that last year. Brought in some guys that really excelled in man coverage at previous stops, really excelled in press coverage at previous stops, asked them to play 10, 15 yards off the ball and play primarily zone. It just doesn't make much sense to try and do that, so it's good to hear that this is kind of the polar opposite. Whatever someone's good at, he said, we're going to have them do that. He said if they show that they're not good at something, we're not going to make them do that. It's pretty simple way to think about things, but for some reason that hasn't been the way that it's been thought of here recently. He also says that he feels like kind of the most important cornerstones of his defense are those edge pieces, be able to keep that offense contained. So for him, that means having solid edge rushers, which I think you can tell how much of a priority that is by what West Virginia did in the transfer portal, getting Jamori Robinson, who we're all excited about, getting Braden Siders, getting Keenan Eck and Adam Tomczyk out of the JUCO ranks. They're trying to really solidify those edges, and of course, we know all of the defensive backs that West Virginia added as well. So you can definitely tell that he's putting his money where his mouth is there. Not only saying that he really feels like having the edges and being able to contain the offense is important, but also in the pieces that they brought in, he's shown that they're really trying to do just that and execute that on Saturdays. He was asked the top three qualities he looks for in a defensive player, and he said long, fast, and physical would be the 3 qualities that he looks for, which is nice to hear as well. I think we could definitely improve the team speed all around, probably offense and defense, but particularly on defense. Felt like we were a step slow at times, so it seems like that will be a focus moving forward. And I think we kind of all assumed that just with Rich Rod at the helm. That's one thing he always has hung his hat on is team speed. He said they'll vary, as far as talking a little bit more about the personnel now, because people were asking, what do you use? And this kind of goes back into what I talked about a second ago about how they switch up the way that they scheme things up, the way that they do personnel, because he says they'll vary from sometimes they'll use 3 safeties, just all 3 safeties will be on the field. Sometimes they'll have 2 safeties and then more of the nickel player there on the field, and then sometimes they'll even play all 3 safeties and a nickel. So you never know what you're going to get there in that back end, depending on down and distance, depending on the team you're matched up against, which is something else that he focused on, saying, hey, if the team has a really good X receiver, we may tell our best corner, hey, you're going to cover him all game. Or if someone has a really good slot, we're going to switch up who we put on that slot man. Or if someone has a really good running back that runs well inside, we're going to run some fronts and some schemes to really bottle that up and make them, bounce that thing outside. So he really not only adapts his scheme to his personnel, but adapts the game plan on a week-to-week basis based on the opponent's strengths as well. All really positive things that is something that we haven't had here at WVU in recent years when we're talking about the defense. And then he was asked a little bit about, of course, the front end there, the front 7, if you will, the D-line and the linebackers. He said, they'll have a bandit, they'll have the nickel/Sam player, and they'll have a Mike and a Will. The bandit will be a hybrid, outside linebacker/defensive end. So when you're going to that 4 down front that he talked about, you're going to have your 3 traditional D linemen, and then your 4th that'll be down there, whether his hand's in the dirt or whether he's standing on the end, will be that bandit player there on the edge. And then they'll have their what'll either be a Sam linebacker type or a nickel on the field. And then, of course, you'll have your two linebackers pretty much consistently always on the field, your Mike backer and your Will backer. From what I understand, they use those kind of interchangeably. So you might have one of those guys line up as the Mike, and the next series you might line up as the Will. They kind of use those pretty interchangeably. But I really liked what I heard from Zach Alley in his press conference. I continue to be impressed by him. Not only you can look at the stats and his numbers in recent years and be impressed by those, but then when you hear him speak and the way that he breaks things down, you can tell that he is just as smart as advertised. I know that people were talking about, how brilliant he is, not only with his football mind, but just in general, the high ACT, SAT scores that he had coming out of school even. So he's really, a guy that's just on a skyrocket ship throughout the coaching ranks, and you can see how quickly he's progressed, to be as young as he is. Like I said, younger than me, probably younger than most of you guys watching or listening to this, but super impressive, and I was really impressed by Zach Alley's press conference. So wanted to touch on that a little bit because I didn't get a chance to yet. That was from about a week ago. But let's flash forward to today, talk a little bit about what Rich Rod had to say in today's press conference. I know he had some really good comments from his press conference last week, but I know some of you guys have probably, seen most of those already, so I won't go into that too much. But I do think that something that stood out from the previous press conference was he really had positive things to say about Jaheim White, which you guys know, that's my guy right there. Love Jaheim. And I got to shout out Jaheim White, by the way, because last live stream I did, you guys know, it was kind of Jaheim-centric. And I get done, and probably less than an hour after I finished that stream, Twitter notification pops up. And I was shocked to see it was Jaheim White himself, sending me a really kind message saying he appreciated the support and the kind words, and he had watched the video, which blew me away. And he's been really cool to me and stuff since then. And not only has he already been my favorite player, but now he's a really awesome guy that I've learned to go along with that. So shout out to Jaheim White on that. But I was excited to hear Rich Rod say positive things about him, despite the fact that he's dealing with a knee injury. And the way that Rich Rod was talking almost seemed like he wasn't too concerned, about Jaheim leaving the program. So hopefully, maybe we're making, much ado about nothing. I know Jaheim made a post that kind of seemed to contradict the fact that he may leave, and fingers crossed that he doesn't and he stays following spring ball, because like we said, I know he can have a big year. So that's one thing from the previous one. But the other one, I'll just share my tweet on this one, because I'm sure you guys saw this going around on social media. This was my favorite quote from his previous press conference. If they're keeping score, we're trying to whoop your ass. If any guys on the team don't have that mentality, then they're not going to last. And I said that's refreshing to hear, because that's the kind of mentality we've really been missing, kind of the polar opposite of the previous regime. And that ties right in, of course, to that hard edge philosophy, right? Which Rich Rod said, you don't teach that, you live it every day. And you can tell that Rich Rod does live that. So wanted to go back. That was in retrospect to his previous press conference. But let's talk about what Rich Rod had to say today, because I think some of you guys will find this really interesting, and jotted down some notes as well. Hopefully you guys get a chance to check out the press conference in its entirety after you finish the stream here. But, hey, give you some the standout points that I thought came out of it from his press conference today. So let's get into that really quickly. I'm going to take a swig of my drink here, and then we will get into that one. And you guys know I don't drink much soda. It's usually coffee or water, but these Dr. Pepper blackberries got a chokehold on me right now, so they're pretty darn good if you haven't tried them. But nonetheless, let's get into Rich Rod's press conference from today. One of the things he said at the top was something that we knew about, but I'd forgotten about until he brought it up again, and it's something that stood out to me going to games last season. Steven and I, one of the co-hosts here, talked about it. The flying WV at midfield, it looked awful faded. I was wondering why they didn't repaint that prior to the season, and then come to find out the reason they didn't is because they're about to replace that turf. And Rich Rod kind of reiterated that in his press conference, saying the turf at the stadium and the turf at the practice field are both set to be replaced. He said in a couple of months, it sounds like they'll be doing that over the summer. He yet again mentioned he is pleased with the progress of the quarterbacks, which has been kind of a bit of a bright spot, I guess you could say, because even in his previous press conference, he talked about the quarterbacks were, really good. He was really pleased with them, and yet again hammered that home. So I think he really likes the room that he has there at QB. Mentioned wanting more depth at wide receiver. Feels like they don't quite have the numbers yet. Now, we do have some guys that will be adding over the summer already, but that also maybe mean that they may be going out and hitting some more guys out of the portal at the wide receiver position. I know that there will be spots they look to fill following the spring. And he also, to go along with that, talked a little bit about that roster limit, which is something that he talked about previously. It was rumored to be cut down to 105 in April if that House settlement is approved. And it sounds like he said from the Big 12 meetings that everyone is assuming that roster limit, roster limit, what am I, a frog? Roster limit will be 105. So he said after the spring, they're going to have to cut some guys, not only to get down to the 105, but also to clear out room at some positions where they feel like they'll need to add some players. So, as expected, after spring football is done, we're going to see a good bit of movement in the transfer portal yet again. Both guys moving out and guys moving in. Last year at Jack State, Rich Rod added, I believe it was 40 guys just after spring ball there at Jack State. So you're going to see a lot of, transfers in and out after the spring. And I think that hopefully we don't have to have, 40 new guys after spring like they did at Jack State, because I think that could have been one of the reasons they got off to a slow start there. I believe they started the year 0-3 and then didn't lose a game again throughout the regular season, went on a streak to close the year. But I feel like we're probably in a bit better shape unless we get absolutely decimated again to where we won't have to add, 40 more guys after the spring. We're probably looking at, somewhere more closer to 7 to 12 guys, something in that range maybe. I don't think we'll be adding a ton following spring football unless we get hit with some departures that we aren't expecting. But he did mention that he's really not a fan of that 105 number. He'd like it to be a little bit higher, it sounds like, and don't blame him there because you're going to have to make some tough decisions moving forward. He says, with the roster limits, though, guys that can play multiple positions are now going to be even more valuable, especially on that defensive side. He was kind of talking about guys that can cross-train, play different spots on the D-line, play different linebacker positions. Maybe you could play corner and nickel. Maybe you can play safety and nickel. Those type of guys are going to become more valuable now with these new roster limits that are going to be coming in over the summer most likely. He mentioned that he's learned that you find out about QBs more, once you go live with them. He joked about, Pat White the first time he was here. He said, I must not have been that smart because I had, Pat sitting behind Bednarik there. And, of course, once Pat got on the field, everything changed. And then he also said, kind of the similar thing happened at Arizona with Khalil Tate. He wasn't starting him. He got into the game, I think he said, against Colorado, and, of course, went crazy. And Khalil Tate was an awesome running quarterback as well at Arizona. And then even last year at Jack State, they got Tyler Huff at quarterback, but he didn't come in until, closer to the start of fall camp. So they didn't really get a chance to see him live until, game day. And then once they saw him live, they was like, okay, he's a pretty good runner. We need to roll with him. And he became the starter there. So, he mentioned you learn more about the quarterbacks once you're going live, in a game setting, because sometimes those quarterbacks run faster when the things are live and they just play different, which is actually the polar opposite of something that Neil Brown said that I personally have disagreed with for a long time, because you've heard Neil Brown say in the past that he doesn't believe in gamers. And to me, that's just absolutely asinine, because we've seen so many gamers at WVU. Mentioned one right there, Pat White, who obviously in practice, the coaching staff felt like, Bednarik was the guy. You get out on game day, Pat White was obviously, a gamer that got it done. You look at a guy like a Skylar Howard, who you could say the same thing about. The list goes on and on. So glad to hear that our new coach doesn't have that same mentality, and we'll be excited to see how those, quarterbacks end up splitting snaps, throughout the spring and into the fall. I don't think we'll decide on a starter probably until the fall. And Rich Rod said he's not against playing, multiple quarterbacks either, because he said he doesn't buy into the old adage of if you have 2 QBs or if you have 3 QBs, you have none. And he referenced, back at Ole Miss when he had 2 really good quarterbacks in Matt Corral and John Reese Plumlee, and both of those guys, splitting reps there as well, which both those guys were really good quarterbacks. So it's, if you feel like you have 2 guys that are 1A and 1B, he'll find a way to get both those guys into the game plan, because the way that he puts it is, if he feels like you're a player that can help the team win, he's going to get you onto the field in some way, which is a great strategy to have, in my opinion. He likes using backups on special teams, which is, again, another change from our previous coaching staff, who really like to have, some of their better players on special teams, which, you can see the positives of both of those strategies, why you'd want to have some of your better, faster guys on special teams. And then Rich Rod, he explained today why he likes to have backups on special teams, which I can also see the positives there and why you'd want to have that mentality. As he mentioned, guys that are backups, they're going to be more fresh. They're going to be able to, put forth max effort on those special teams units. And of course, he's talking more coverage units as far as return men and stuff. He's not opposed to having starters involved there. But he also said, some of those guys that are backups, if their only playing time that they're getting is there on special teams, then they're going to value that a little bit more, and they're going to, go all out for you on those special teams units, which also makes sense. Where was that here? He says, have to adapt to the new ways of recruiting and roster management, which he feels like he's done a good job of. And he says, I like winning too much not to adapt. And that's, pretty much a direct quote that I wrote down from him, because it's one that I like. A couple quotes of his that I wrote down here, but I really like that one, that he likes winning too much to not adapt to the new style of roster and recruiting. He says also, this is another quote that I wrote down, because one thing that I think we're all excited about is the up-tempo style, the spot-the-ball style, to get off and running on offense, which, yet again, I know I sound like a broken record here, but I think that it's another polar opposite from the previous regime. We all know the slow-paced ball control offense we've been utilizing the past couple of seasons, and we're going to have, definitely the opposite of that, and shouldn't have to deal with delay of game penalties either, which have been a problem in the past. As Rich Rod said here, the quote, if we're getting delay of game penalties, you better check my pulse, because that shouldn't be happening, which makes sense with the up-tempo style that we're trying to run. And then he was asked a little bit about the new systems, mainly the communication system, where you're able to talk to the quarterbacks now via the headset, which they implemented last year, of course. The NFL's used it for a long time now, but came into the college game officially last year. And he said he actually lets Rhett Rodriguez be the one that talks to the quarterbacks there via the communication system in the helmet, because he feels like he'd just be yelling at them too much. And he yet again said, Rhett has a bit more calm demeanor than he does, so he lets him handle the communications between the quarterbacks. And then talked a little bit about Rhett Rodriguez and Pat White and why he went out and got those guys to bring into the program to coach the quarterbacks together. And one of the reasons is he feels like they're both valuable because they both not only know the system, but they both also played quarterback in the system. Of course, we know Pat White played in it here. Rhett played in it at Arizona. And I think he may have been at ULM as well, if I'm not mistaken. And also, something that really stuck out to me about Rhett Rodriguez that I didn't know prior to this, and this kind of ties into what we were talking about earlier with Zach Alley and his intelligence, is that Rhett Rodriguez is really smart as well. Rich said that he's never made a B throughout his whole time at school, was nothing but A's, 4.0 GPA, and says, quote unquote, he's a lot smarter than I am. So that, speaks highly of Rhett Rodriguez, who is also someone that's climbing up the coaching ranks rather quickly. And then was asked a little bit more about the scheme, and the last little quote that I have here was just him talking about kind of the difference of his scheme now versus when he was here the first time. Still plays with 11, still uses the QB runs, still has, the read options, but have had to, evolve with how they kind of scheme up those plays, because now defenses used to just fit the run on one side, and then the backside would just try and chase down the play, follow the ball. Now they fit the run one way on the front side and one way on the back side, so you've had to adapt in that way. And then also he mentioned, kind of the addition of RPOs. He said, the first time that they were here, they would have, a read option play called, and then you might have a screen tag on it to where you can throw a bubble screen or a now screen out to the outside. And it wasn't really a true RPO in that way, just kind of a run play with a screen tag on it. Versus now they utilize a little bit more of the RPO game, and their RPOs here in the Rich Rod system are going to have three options, of course, with the ability to hand the ball to the running back, the ability for the quarterback to pull it out of there and run that read option that we come to know and love in the Rich Rod system. And then, of course, they'll have some glance routes and stuff tied onto the end of those, whether that's a slant route, out route, go route, whatever. They'll have those tags right there, and so you'll be a little bit more true RPO. So those are some of the notes that I had from Rich Rod's press conference today, and we'll get to some of the other details here in a minute, but that's what I wanted to lead it off with, just kind of the updates from Zach Alley and from Rich Rod, which to me just got me even more excited about the upcoming season, as if we weren't excited enough, right? So take a swig of my drink. I'm going to catch up on some of your all's comments, then we'll get to some of the other topics that I've got pulled up here. Appreciate you guys that are in here live with me. If you're in here live or on a playback, like I said, just do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button. No, it's crazy, but it helps a ton. And be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All right, let's see what we got. Hey, channel member Trey Edwards, what's going on, man? Always appreciate you. He says he hasn't watched the recent Rich Rod presser yet, but getting some spoilers, man. Hey, And I do want to add, there's some other good stuff in there. Just because these are my notes that I jotted down, there may be something in there that sticks out more to you guys as well. So I'd definitely go watch it. I mean, finish the stream here first, but after you're done with that, then go watch Rich Rod's press conference, because another good one from the head man in charge there. But I always appreciate you, Trey, and you guys in there in the chat see the nice little WVU helmet there besides Trey's name there. And if you want to be like Trey and have that nice little emote there beside your name or badge, whatever you want to call it, and then you have access to custom emojis, and those are just a couple of the perks you get for being a channel member here, not to mention monthly live streams where we just kind of hang out and you get behind the scenes looks for the Almost Heaven members. We also, any podcast recordings or pre-recorded videos I usually let the channel members watch me record those, so you get behind the scenes content there. And then of course once we get into the season, you get the film reviews, the player grades, the snap counts, all of that good stuff if you become a channel member here. So you can hit the subscribe button and you'll get a ton of WVU football content directly into your feed for free. But if you want that little bit extra, the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is just that little bit extra. So if you want that extraordinary WVU football content, you can become a channel member here by hitting the join button down there in the video description. And it helps keep this mic recording, keep that camera rolling, and we're really appreciative of that. And we try and give back that bonus content for you, for being a channel member here, which we can never thank you guys enough. So just a little bit bonus there, wanted to inform you guys of that may not know. Matt Dix, what's going on, man? Appreciate you hopping in. I hadn't seen you in a while. Glad you're hopping in more often. Always appreciate seeing your face. He says, how about that WVU baseball team? 8-0, the men and women in the tourney? Yeah, hey, shout out to the WVU baseball team, by the way. I was on social media, was that yesterday or day before? I think it was yesterday, talking a little WVU baseball with some people, because you guys that have followed here for a while know I know absolutely nothing about baseball. I've just never been able to get into baseball. I've tried the past couple of years to watch a couple of WVU games. Never been able to make it past an inning or two. I just can't do baseball. It's just like watching paint dry to me, And that's no disrespect to people that do enjoy baseball. I wish I did. It'd be something else for me to enjoy, but I do try and keep up with it via highlights, recaps on social media and stuff. And I have been following the WVU baseball team the past couple of years as they've really turned that program around to now this year an 8-0 start. Their first home game yesterday got the win there, which I learned, because that was the tweet that I put out when I seen they were 7-0 and hadn't had a home game yet. I was like, what the heck? But then I was informed, people will go south because baseball apparently doesn't play in the cold and the rain and stuff like football does, which was news to me. But like I said, I'm learning. You guys are educating me a little bit on baseball, and I appreciate that. So teams that, have colder weather sometimes go south, and baseball also plays series, which is something else I didn't know. So it wasn't like they played 7 games without, being home as just, a couple series or so. But now finally got to have their home opener. I think they had another record crowd there, which is awesome. That new baseball field is beautiful. I love driving by that thing when I'm in Morgantown. But shout out to the baseball team indeed. 8-0 start under new coach Steve Sabins and looking pretty talented yet again. And then the men and women's team should definitely both be in the tourney, I think. Now the men's, we still got a little bit of work to do to fully secure that, but I feel pretty confident, and we'll talk more about that towards the tail end of the stream. I want to recap that most recent basketball game, but shout out to the women as well, man. JJ Quinterly tying the school record with 38 points in their most recent game, and they got another home win, finishing the regular season undefeated at home, 16-0, which is a hell of a job from the WVU women's team. So definitely all those programs deserve shout outs as well. Matt, appreciate you bringing that up. Trey Edwards says we're about to overtake the party school title. We're going to become a sports school, baby. Let's go Mountaineers. Hey, and I think it's no coincidence. We've always been up there, but you look back 05, 06, 07, it was like we were constantly number one in the country in the party school rankings there. That I think, what is it, Playboy that puts those out or whatever. And obviously, I think our success in football ties right into that. And if that comes back, like you say, Trey, that probably will go back up the list as well. Hey, JR is in here. What's going on, JR? Appreciate you always. Says spot the ball, fellas. Hey, that's right. That's right. Trey Edwards, channel member, says Dom equals wide receiver 1. You guys know, huge fans of Dom Collins from where I'm from down here in Mercer County. And, man, did you guys see his vertical? I got to pull that picture up now in case you guys haven't seen it. I shared it on social media and stuff because I was so impressed by it. And also, which you guys know, I'm friends with Dom Collins' brother as well. And he stated not only is Dom shining on the field, but he's also on the honor roll. So he deserves a shout out for that. He was a weight room warrior recently. He's on the honor roll. He runs a 4.240. This guy's super fast. I think he's going to have a big year this year. But not only that, just look how athletic he is. Let me find the picture here that they put out during workouts. It was a max day, and of course they're doing verticals, they're doing max bench, all that stuff. But look at the vertical on Dom Collins here, guys. If the speed's not enough, how about this athleticism right here? I mean, that's 40-plus inch vertical right there, man. You're talking about a guy that can jump like that and run like he does. I don't see how you can keep him off the field this year. I just don't see how you can. I think he can be an absolute stud in a Rich Rod scheme, and I'd love to see him be a kick and punt returner as well. But that's impressive right there. You know, I'm right there with you, Trey. I'm right there with you on that comment, man, for sure. JR says, Jaheim. Hey, that's right, man. That's my dude. Quite literally now. I can consider him a friend of the show now, too, I guess, in addition to being my favorite player, which is really cool. George Edwards says, we love being the underdogs. Make no mistake, we'll be ready by August. Hey, that's right. I fully believe that this staff will have this team ready, and we're going to win a lot of games come the fall here. So appreciate you guys that are in here live and sharing some comments and such. But let's get into it here and talk a little bit about some of the other comments from some of the other coaches as well. I want to share these videos that have been going around on social media. First, let's share Travis Trickett recently rejoined the staff. Ace recruiter, West Virginia's recruiting in the South, about to pick up majorly. We've already got Jafar Jean Noel committed in the 2026 class, a speedy receiver there out of Florida. And Travis Trickett does a great job recruiting Florida, Georgia, all those areas. So excited to have him back for that reason. But let's hear him talk a little bit about, the strategy for the West Virginia offense.
Travis Trickett, senior offensive assistant. Well, it's an opportunity to get back to a university that's done a lot for me and my family. It gave me and my wife our education. It's provided for our family. My father, when he worked here under Coach Rodriguez, myself. And it was an opportunity not only to do that and get back to this university, but also to come back to work under the coach that I came up under. Coach Rodriguez's offense are distinct. When you watch a Coach Rodriguez offense, no matter where he's been, the style of play is different. It's a mentality-driven offense that shows up on film, how hard they play, the relentless effort they play with, the hard edge they play with. And that's the thing that we're going to work on right now immediately, is instilling Coach Rodriguez's mentality into our offense. And so when West Virginia takes the field, we're going to be different than everyone else who play.
And it's that last little comment right there that really gets me excited, because it, goes hand in hand with what Rich Rod's been saying since he was hired. When you see West Virginia play, you're going to know that we're playing hard and then we're putting on for the state. And, right there, Travis Trickett's comments kind of go hand in hand with that. So I think that's one thing we don't have to be concerned about, is this team's going to play hard. Because if you're a player that don't play hard, that doesn't want to be coached hard, they're going to tell you to hit the bricks straight up, man. And that's, like we said, that's the mentality that we've been looking for, the mentality we've been missing. So excited about that. And then speaking of, not only did we hear from Travis Trickett, but how about we hear from the new offensive line coach? We know offensive line is going to be a completely rebuilt unit, essentially, all new starters. And Jack Bicknell is going to be leading that unit, which, of course, is very important in a Rich Rod system, as we run the ball a lot and we need to protect the quarterback too. But let's hear what Jack Bicknell has to say in his video put out here by the WVU media team, which shout out to them. They always do a great job, and they've done a great job on these videos as well.
Jack Bicknell, offensive line coach. Well, first of all, Coach Rodriguez, I think, is one of the best coaches in the country. I had the pleasure of working with him at Ole Miss in 2019. Really enjoyed working with him. Just an unbelievable offensive mind. So to be able to be reunited with him was big for me. And then just the storied tradition of this place. I played at Boston College all the way back in 1984. We beat a lot of people, but in 5 years we could never beat West Virginia. And just it's always been a place that I think has such a passionate fan base. It's the only show in town for West Virginia. Well, Coach Rod has a saying of hard edge, and I feel like we have to be the example of the hard edge for the rest of the team. And that means we're going to be playing hard. The other thing he always talks about is strain. And we're going to play tough. We're going to play with a hard edge, and we're going to strain, and we're going to be an example for everybody else.
Gotta love that as well. And, man, does he not have that hoarse, raspy voice? It just sounds like a offensive line coach. And like I said, the hard edge mentality, it's there across the team. But the fact that the offensive line feels like they need to be the leader of that is big, because you need those guys to be nasty in the trenches. And that's one thing that we always excelled at when Rich Rod was here the first time. And I think, despite the fact of it being a different offensive line coach this go around, with it being Jack Bicknell, he has a ton of experience coaching multiple Power 5 stops, coaching in the NFL. And as he mentioned there, also, experience playing the position. He was one of the offensive linemen, protecting Doug Flutie at Boston College back in the day. Actually played against Rich Rod when Rich Rod was a defensive back at WVU, which is good in and of itself. But the thing that excites me about him, as he mentioned there in the video, having coached with Rich Rod, that was when they were at Ole Miss. And the 1 year they were together at Ole Miss, they had one of the best rushing offenses in all of college football. So, that bodes well for them working together again here at WVU. So I was excited to hear from that. But let's hear a little bit from one of the players that has decided to return, utilize that extra year that he has now following the JUCO ruling, and he's decided to come back to WVU. And he's unique because not only did he play for WVU last year, but a couple of years ago he played for Rich Rod and also Zach Alley, who was at Jack State at that time. And this is KK Tarnew, of course, talking a little bit after the first day of practice. Today was the second day, but this is his comments following the first day of practice.
First practice was fun. A lot of guys flew around, we made plays, and then so far so good. We still got a lot of work to do, but overall it was fun.
So the audio not the loudest on that one, but said got a lot of work to do, but overall it was fun. Talking about the first day of practice there, but some good comments from the coaches, some good comments from the players. I wanted to share with you guys, and then lastly, one thing I got to share on the football side is something that we've been trying to share every week on the live streams here, is just keep you guys up to date with the Weight Room Warriors each week. And this past week had a few new ones, Hammond Russell and Eddie V, which is good to see both those guys pop up on there as returners. We don't have a ton of players returning to this team, but both those guys have been contributors in the past. And Eddie V, Steady Eddie, as I like to call him, glad to see him back and able to, be out there lifting weights and being one of the Weight Room Warriors. Then in addition, we have, punter Oliver Straw, the new addition there off the edge, Braden Siders, who I think is going to be a really good pass rusher for this team. And then defensive back Jordan Walker as well. So those were the most recent Weight Room Warriors for this team here this past week, as we continue to share those with you each week here on the streams. Let's go ahead. Let's catch up on some more comments. Then let's talk a little bit about some of the university stuff. We'll share Ren Baker's letter. We'll share the official announcement of the president, and then we'll talk a little basketball as we wrap up here on the stream here. Before too much longer, Trey Edwards says this staff has no excuses, and I love it. Couldn't agree more, Trey. I love everyone that's talked about this staff, and get a little spam comment there I see as well that popped up on the Twitch side. But no excuses is indeed a great way to put it, Trey. And I love this comment here also from channel member Trey Edwards. Bicknell reminds me of a mafia boss. I could totally see that. He kind of has that demeanor to him, no nonsense guy, if you will. And I think that he's a great offensive line coach for sure. Eric Flowers, what's up, bro? Appreciate you as always. And I can never thank Eric enough, helping provide some of the mugs here in the background. And I had a couple of them, but he had even more that he gifted me, and really cool of Eric to do that. But not too late, Eric. I mean, I went over the press conference details. Of course, you can always rewind and catch those if you want. Talked a little bit about Zach Alley's press conference from last week and covered Rich Rod's press conference from today. And then I've been talking a little bit about some of the other staff members. But, that's what the playback's for, man. You can always catch it or just rewind this one, and you won't exactly be live. But nonetheless, I appreciate you hopping in and tuning in regardless, man. Always thankful for you. And same goes for my guy, Drum Wolf, who is here. What's going on, Drum Wolf? Always appreciate you as well, man. But that's kind of my thoughts on the football side of things from Zach Alley's presser, from Rich Rod's, and then talking a little bit about the staff and some of the schemes and players and such that have stood out thus far through spring ball, which not too much to judge yet. They're still in shorts, not even in pads yet. I figure once we get, more into hitting and stuff, they'll be able to provide us more with kind of information on who's standing out in what position and things like that as we progress through the spring. Still very early, only the second day of practice thus far, but moving right along as we'll wrap up with the spring showcase on April 5th here, just a little bit over a month away. But having said that, one person that's very vital to West Virginia's success, not only in football, but across all sports, is none other than Ren Baker, who's done a great job as West Virginia's athletic director. And he recently penned a letter to Mountaineer Nation, which I wanted to read for you guys here because it's kind of him talking a little bit about how college athletics is changing, be it revenue sharing, all of those things that are about to take place this upcoming year. It's going to look a lot different, not only for football, but for a lot of sports. And Ren Baker kind of addressed that recently. So let's read through Ren Baker's statement here, which I believe this was yesterday morning. Yes, February 26th around 9. Ren Baker says, "Dear Mountaineer Nation, as we transition into the spring sports season, I want to provide an update on our position with the evolving landscape of collegiate athletics and underscore the critical role revenue generation plays in ensuring our department remains among the nation's elite. Collegiate athletics is undergoing the most transformational period in its history, driven by unprecedented changes in governance, conference realignment, name, image, and likeness opportunities, and the evolving financial landscape. As we adapt to these shifts, the need for innovation, strategic planning, and sustainable revenue generation has never been greater. The House versus the NCAA case has the potential to reshape the financial model of collegiate athletics by paving the way for revenue sharing with student athletes, which, according to all accounts, that is probably going to be, approved in April. If implemented, though, this shift would require WVU athletics to rethink its budget, as funds previously allocated to operations, facilities, and other areas may need to be redirected to compensate athletes. To navigate this, we must explore new revenue streams and ways to grow our current revenue while managing our costs effectively. We are actively preparing for these changes and working closely with the university to ensure long-term relevancy and success. In the coming weeks and months, we will share key initiatives with you aimed at addressing a $20 million increase in expenditures. These efforts are critical in sustaining our spot in the national landscape and growing WVU athletics. Your ongoing support and involvement will play a vital role as we move forward in this important endeavor. As we navigate these future financial challenges, we are committed to sustaining competitive excellence among our 18 varsity sports programs. Your continued support in these areas will help propel WVU athletics forward." So here is how we can do our part right here with these 3 bullet points: purchasing season tickets, becoming a member of the Mountaineer Athletic Club, and market-based name, image, and likeness support for student athletes, which I'm sure a lot of you, like myself, have probably done all 3 of those things. And if you are, give yourself a pat on the back, a little golf clap, because that's what we need if we want to remain competitive, with other Power 4 programs. It's up to us, as well. It's not just on the university anymore. We can do our part also. Change in college athletics is happening, and we will keep you informed. I sincerely thank you once again for your commitment. Your unwavering loyalty, generosity, and support are the foundation of our storied past and bright future. Let's go. And then, of course, signed by Ren Baker. So great statement there by Ren Baker. And I think one that's very needed, because I think some fans may not realize that, hey, you're complaining about X guy hitting the transfer portal, or you're complaining about why are we not getting, more better players, as they term it on 3 guys sometimes. And one of the reasons is, hey, throw out there, throw some money into it, man. I think that, not saying that you don't have the right to complain if you don't do those things, but if you do those things, then no one can say anything if you do complain. If you're a member of the MAC, if you're a member of the Country Roads Trust, or, donating to a player's NIL via the NIL shop, buying a t-shirt, all of those things. And of course, season tickets or game-to-game tickets, single game tickets, whatever you can do to help really goes a long way, especially as it appears this House settlement will be approved in April and we'll move to a revenue sharing model for the upcoming season. So wanted to share that from Ren Baker, because I think it is very important for us to hear as fans. And then in addition to that, along the university side, the last live stream that we did, we talked about the new WVU president that will be coming in over the summer. We knew who it would be. We just didn't have the official announcement from the university, but now we do indeed have that official announcement, which came back on Monday. The 27th president, Michael Benson, pledges to lead by example and with enthusiasm. Here is the press release here. I just want to read through his statement as he says, "I am honored to be named president of West Virginia University, one of our nation's oldest land-grant institutions. My 30-year career in public higher education has prepared me for this singular opportunity, and I wish to thank the Board of Governors for the trust they have placed in me and hope to earn that same level of trust and support from the entire WVU community." And, of course, he will be the 27th president, and his appointment will begin in July. He'll be this will be Benson's 5th presidency. He has been at Coastal Carolina, Snow College, Southern Utah, and Eastern Kentucky. During his tenure at Coastal Carolina, he secured a $10 million gift, the largest in the school's history, and he worked closely with community partners and policymakers to advance initiatives that benefited CCU. So I think that first sentence is big with what we just talked about with the revenue sharing, and fundraising is obviously something that's important now, something that Brent Baker is good at, and sounds like Michael Benson is good at it as well, which will only benefit WVU as a whole and of course WVU athletics as well. He states, I'm looking forward to bringing that same approach to West Virginia as I meet with people from across the WVU system and from City Hall to the state capitol, along with West Virginians from communities across the state and our incredible network of alumni around the world. So there is the announcement there. And then, of course, we get some announcements, quotes from other members of the staff there, but don't want to read through it all. It's pretty lengthy, but if you guys want to check it out, you can. But like we said there, he will take over as president officially in July. So Michael Benson, the new president at WVU, did want to share that official announcement and get his statements in there. So we talked about it when it was reported there, but now it is official. So that's kind of all I had as far as football and the university side of things is concerned. But now we got to switch gears and we got to talk WVU basketball here before we wrap up the stream momentarily. Won't be with you guys too much longer. Try and wrap this up here about 10, 15 minutes or so. But I think that West Virginia really did a lot for their tournament chances with that win over TCU a couple of nights ago. And so we're going to do a quick recap of that win, and then we'll take a look at the schedule and kind of give you guys my thoughts on what WVU needs to grab in these final games to feel really kind of like they're locked into an NCAA tournament berth. But we'll take a look at the bracketology and see where they stand currently following the game against TCU as well. But let's pull up the stats from that game first, talk a little bit about it, because I think this was a game, and it seemed to me that West Virginia knew it was must-win. They came out the gates playing like it was must-win, and this was a game that was decided after the first half. Now, you couldn't coast in the second half and give up. West Virginia did outscore TCU in the second half as well, but the way that they played in the first half was absolutely lights out. I mean, 42 points in a half is a lot for this year's West Virginia team, who has really kind of hung their hat on defense and had some offensive struggles at times. But this game, it was really kind of firing on all cylinders to get their 17th win of the year, to move to 17-11 overall, and now 8-9 in the Big 12. What you feel like, 18 wins in this conference would probably lock you into the NCAA tournament. But if you can get 19, then you're feeling really good about that, especially considering the fact that you could secure some wins in the Big 12 tournament as well. But let's look at how this one turned out for the Mountaineers against the Horned Frogs. West Virginia shot 52% from the field, one of the better shooting performances of the season for the Mountaineers, as they also held TCU to 39% and TCU to 21% on threes, and West Virginia hit 42% of their threes in the game. So West Virginia red hot in that contest. Free throws a lot more, fair compared to the game in Fort Worth. Let's just put it that way, because I think when we played TCU in Fort Worth, they shot 23 free throws compared to West Virginia's 5 free throws, if I remember that correctly. Which led me to, put out a tweet on social media saying it's kind of funny, when the foul number is more equal, seems like we're a little bit better team than TCU versus when they get, triple the amount of free throws that we get nearly. I guess that's more than triple. If we had 5, they had 23. That's 4 times as many free throws, nearly 5 times as many free throws as we shot in that game. It seems like we are a little bit better team than them when things are called evenly. Just saying. Nonetheless, though, we shoot 73% from the line. They shoot 75%. We do win the rebounding game there, the rebounding battle, 29-28, which is, hats off to West Virginia. Battling on the boards, despite being a team that lacks in height, they continue to battle there. 17 assists. The ball movement was there, which was one reason that the scoring was there and the shots were there for West Virginia. 17 assists as opposed to 8 for TCU. West Virginia steals the ball 10 times. TCU gets 5. The one thing that you want to see West Virginia continue to do a little bit better job of, in my opinion, is just the turnover number. 13 turnovers in this game for West Virginia, 14 for TCU. You'd like to see West Virginia get that down to, single digits if possible. I feel like that's a good recipe for success for the Mountaineers. But they did do a good job on the fast break point side of things, scoring a lot themselves and then holding TCU down to only 4 fast break points. Fouls, like I said, way more even, 16 on TCU, 14 on the Mountaineers, and West Virginia had a 22-point lead at one point in this game. And, of course, the standout performance, we got Javon Small back in gear, looked like his old self in this one, which I was excited to see because I know there were some concerns of, if he was battling that injury that it looked like he suffered a couple of games ago. Comes back on this one just red hot, 50% from the field, over 50% from the three-point line, 23 points, 10 assists, 5 rebounds for Javon Small. Excellent game. Then you get Sincere Harris, who had an awesome game, particularly in the first half. I think he had 11 of that 13 in the first half. Add 5 rebounds, 2 steals, 2 blocks to that. Jonathan Powell held scoreless, which you don't see a ton there. Amani Hansberry's really been coming on as of late. He'd been grabbing a ton of rebounds. Didn't necessarily have to do that in this game. It was more by committee, but he did add 9 points. 6 for Toby Oconee. And then you got some good bench scoring in this game. 4 for Andre, 4 for Tenor, who was 100% from the field. Actually, both those guys 100% from the field in the game. 3 steals for KJ Tenor. Shout out to KJ. They're playing some good defense in this game as well. And I think that's an aspect of his game that's underrated. People look at his height and, sometimes he gets guys that can shoot over him. But, man, he really has some quick hands. You'll see him reach in and poke the ball out when a guy's driving that's not even his man. Someone's kind of coming by him trying to get into the lane, and he's really good at poking the ball out. And he does it without, getting the reach-in foul called. He's really good at that, and it resulted in 3 steals in this game. And then, of course, Joe Yesufu, who has been our 6th man, if you will, our go-to bench scorer. And this game, he really performed well. Yet again, 50% from the three-point line, 4 of 8, adds 14 points and 6 rebounds. Really great game from Joe Yesufu and a great game from the Mountaineers overall in this one, which really, like I said, was a must-win. So I was glad to see them secure that victory. And then that should really help the NCAA tournament status. Which let's take a look at how that sits now. We'll take a look at the bracketology, both on ESPN and on CBS. Then we'll take a look at the upcoming schedule here before we wrap up this one in just a few minutes. But this one actually has been updated by Joe Lunardi since 225. Was that since our game? What day did we play TC? Let's see here. So he updated 225 at 9 a.m. So this one hasn't been updated since we played TCU. But I believe we're still in here. I believe this is the same one that I shared last time where we are, one of the last 4 buys. So hopefully he'll have another update on that one here soon in the recent future. Let me check. I'm going to go ahead and pull up sometimes he updates it on social media even before he updates it on there. So let me see if he's put another one out since then on social media. Make sure of that really quick before I share the CBS one here. Let's see. This looks like a more updated version. This he put out on February 26th. So from Joe Lunardi, who does the ESPN bracketology. You see in the Big 12 here, 5 locks, 1 likely, 8 total, 1 bubble. And right now he has us projected as a 9 seed, number 36 overall, which, man, I would really love to avoid the 8 or 9 seed. I mean, if we could grab a few more wins, maybe we could get up to the 7, but daggone, I'd rather have a 7 or a 10 than an 8 or 9. That dreaded 8 or 9 seed's just, it's tough, man. It's tough. But, if you want to throw the gold and blue glasses on, West Virginia's upsetted some really upsetted, I don't think that's a word. West Virginia has upset some really, highly ranked teams already this year. So even if you do have to, win that 8-9 game and then face a number 1 seed in the second round, still got faith in the Mountaineers that they'll be able to play with them. But I'd much rather face the 2 seed as a 7 seed or a 10 seed. So let's see if West Virginia can climb up, get to that 7 seed range. I'd love to see that happen. You're going to have to, win several of these games down the stretch to be able to do that. But that's how ESPN sees things thus far. Let's pull up the CBS bracketology, see where they have things. Then we'll pull up the Mountaineer schedule and see what I think we need to, improve that status or at least kind of lock us into the tournament and get us off the bubble, so to speak. Pull up the CBS bracketology here, which this one hasn't been updated since the 24th, so it's going to be the same as the last time I showed you guys, funny enough. But we are currently a 10 seed here in theirs, which, like I said, I'd rather have the 7 or 10 than the 8 or 9. Tennessee would be a tough matchup as a 2 seed. Creighton, always a good team as well, but that's kind of where CBS has us currently in this one. So both, have us in here, which is good to see. And we've kind of remained we've been on the bubble, but I haven't really seen us bounce off that bubble and be projected as out yet. And I think that more so is because the way that the bubble is kind of weak this year, and a lot of West Virginia's status is going to be really improved because all of the quad 1 wins, also no quad 3 or quad 4 losses. So in comparison to the other bubble teams, West Virginia is kind of going to stack above those, I think, which is really positive for us. And so I feel pretty confident about us getting into the NCAA tournament. Let's pull up the schedule here just to talk a little bit about what we need down the stretch to definitely secure that. I think we got the big win over TCU, which was the one that I was concerned about out of the 2 home games. You know, anything can happen, but we are a better team than UCF, and we should win that one. So that should have us 18. And I think you have to, I mean, you don't have to, I guess. If you have 18 and you get a win in the Big 12 tournament, you probably are still going to get in. But if you're able to win at least one of these 2 road games on the upcoming Utah road trip, which, of course, next game coming up Saturday against BYU on the road, 10 p.m. Eastern tip, it looks like, on ESPN2. BYU's playing really good basketball right now. It's going to be tough. And the funny thing about the Utah game is we'll be facing our interim coach from last year. Josh Eilert was just named the interim coach at Utah. Let's see if I can pull up the thing about that. But it's just ironic. Utah lets their coach go. They named Josh Eilert the interim head coach, and West Virginia's going to have to face him. And yet again, back-to-back seasons that Josh Eilert has been named an interim coach, which is just crazy. You know, what are the odds? And what are the odds that he's named interim coach at Utah just a couple of, a week or so before they're set to play West Virginia? But yeah, he's going to be the interim coach here. I was going to pull up an article that talked a little bit about it here if I could. I don't know if I was going to find one from Utah, but we can pull one up from the Daily Daily Anthem. I've never known how to pronounce that. I get the student paper, I guess that is, at West Virginia, nonetheless. But let's pull this up for a second real quick, then we'll come back to the schedule just because that's interesting. I hadn't had a chance to talk about that yet, the detail. But funny enough, former WVU head coach Josh Eilert, now in the same position at Utah. He was named interim head coach of the Utah men's basketball team earlier this week after they moved on from head coach Craig Smith per a press release. And of course, we know he was the interim coach at WVU last year. The Eilert-led Utah Utes will take on WVU at 9 p.m. Tuesday, March 4th in Utah. So I'm sure that that's one that will have a lot of interest for Josh Eilert probably, and for Mountaineer fans even more so if you weren't interested enough, because we know, like I said, West Virginia probably needs to win at least one of these 2 games to feel extra confident about their tournament status. That's provided that we're assuming you probably beat UCF at home, but you never want to assume because you know what they say. But I think you got to at least split that road trip as well if you want to feel extra confident about your chances. Now, if you were able to some way win out, we beat TCU, and then if we were able to win all 3 of those, go into the Big 12 tournament, what would that put us at? 18, 19? That's 20 wins. I think you're locked in already. But then if you go to the Big 12 tournament, get a win, then you're talking about maybe getting up in that 6 seed, 7 seed range, which is what I would like to see happen. But we'll just have to see how things play out, not only within the conference, but of course around the nation, what happens with the other bubble teams, what happens in conference tournaments, because there's always those teams that'll steal bids. That maybe there's a team that wasn't going to get into the NCAA tournament, but they win their conference title, and now they're in because they won their conference tournament. So, that's just kind of ways that this thing can shake out. But when we look at the schedule, 3 games left. Personally, I think you want to win 2 of these to feel confident. If you win 1, you're probably okay if you can win a Big 12 tournament game. But if you win 2, I think you're a lock. I think you're a lock to be in the tourney. I would love to see us win all 3 and Darren DeVries get 20 wins, in 20 regular season wins his first year at WVU. Because of something that we've talked about Darren DeVries, he's never had less than 20 wins since he's been a head coach. He's always had at least 20 wins. And it seems like he's got a good path to be able to do that again. Even if West Virginia doesn't win out, they can win a game in the Big 12 tournament. They can win a game in the NCAA tournament, and he's probably going to get 20 wins yet again. So Darren DeVries, incredible track record and doing a great job with the Mountaineers. And we'll see what happens coming up this Saturday against BYU, and be back to talk about that one in the near future. But there's an update after West Virginia has greatly improved their tournament chances. Not necessarily a lock yet, but they're on their way there if they can continue to win down the stretch, and they had a really important win over TCU. So that's kind of my thoughts on the basketball side of things, and that's pretty much everything that I wanted to cover, guys. I'm going to catch up on some of your all's final comments here, then we'll get ready to wrap this one up. But I appreciate you guys hopping in here. Trey says, we went into half with a 59% shooting from the field, second for best half percentage-wise this season. Yeah, they were red hot, man. And that's the thing. If we can get a game where we got multiple of our guys hitting their shots like that, and it's not just Javon Small and maybe one other guy, if we can get, a couple other guys hitting shots like we saw in that game. Yesfu had 14. Amani had 9. Buck had 13. You get 20 plus from Javon. If we can get that, we're really cooking with gas, because I feel like under Darren DeVries, the defense is always going to be there. It's just these scoring droughts that have hurt us a little bit. And I think that that's only a product of really the roster that we have this season, losing Tucker and things like that. I think in the future, offense is going to be just as prolific as our defense with Darren DeVries. One of the best ways that it's been put, I think, and it's something that actually, funny enough, I mentioned in the past, but Fran Fraschilla mentioned when he was calling our games, is Darren DeVries really combines kind of your past couple coaches at WVU as really good defense, which we saw under Bob Huggins, but the sets and plays that he draws up on offense are almost John Beilein-esque. So you're getting kind of the best of both worlds there. And Darren DeVries does a really good job with his sets on offense, and the intensity is always there on defense as well. Hey, great point, Trey. Also beat the brakes off of them with Kip Kissinger as the referee, which I was surprised to hear. This one's going to surprise you guys as well. Did you guys know that we're 4-1 with Kip Kissinger refereeing our games this year? It's so crazy. I want to shout out, I think it was, who was it that put me on to that on social media? Let me find that so I can give them credit really quickly. But because I put out a tweet that said the most surprising stat was the fact that we won a game with Kip Kissinger officiating, and Captain on social media, shout out at the Captain said, 4-1 in games that Kip's officiated, and I, of course, fact-checked that myself, and that is indeed true. The loss being that game to BYU, but I think the officiating that BYU game was so bad that it really tainted things for us, and thought that, every game that Kip has officiated has been bad for us, but not only this year, but we know in years past he's done a really bad job officiating our games, so I think that plays into it as well. And I, for one, was thinking he, for some reason, officiated that game in Fort Worth, but he didn't. And that was really surprising to me. But yeah, the fact that we got a big win and that we had an advantage in the fouls called with Kip Kissinger as the referee, we'll take that every time. Let's see. Hey, Drum Wolf, I like that. W always plays 3 teams in every game: the announcers, the refs, and the opposing team. Man, I'll tell you what, that's almost accurate, especially on the announcer side. Seems like announcers never really are fans of us. I don't know if that's a ESPN thing or CBS thing or what the deal is there, but if you can sync Caridi up with your broadcast, that's always something I recommend for sure. Eric Flower says Tanner needs to gain a few pounds. Indeed. He's lacking a little bit in the size department, but that'll come in the off season, I think. And I think something that you could say about him and probably multiple players on this team is they're being counted upon to play more than they were expected to going into the season, probably when you thought you'd have a little bit more depth, when you thought you'd have Tucker DeVries, who essentially is a guy that can bring the ball up a court. He can play, basically all 5 positions. He can guard basically all 5 positions. So you wouldn't have had to rely on KJ Tenner to come in and spell Javon Small as much, because you could just shift Tucker over, let him bring the ball up the floor, let him generate the offense. Now that you don't have that, you've had to play Tenner more. And yes, sometimes that results in guys backing him down when he gets a mismatch on the defensive side, or taller guys being able to shoot over him. But the bright side of that, as we throw the gold and blue glasses on, like we like to say here on the CRW, is that's only going to benefit him in the future, and he's really, I think, growing in front of our eyes some as well. Like I mentioned last game, getting those 3 steals. He's done a great job improving his defense, but the size, the physicality aspect is something that you just have to build up in the off season, and I fully expect that they will do that. He'll probably transform his body, and next year he'll look, completely different. And I really like his game, though. That floater is lethal, man. That's something that me and Mountaineer Paul talk about all the time. My friend over the host, Locked On West Virginia, is the floater king, KJ Tenner. Exactly. As Trey Edwards says, only a freshman got plenty of time, and that's something to keep in mind. Of course, you never know what can happen this day and age with the transfer portal. But if we're able to keep Jonathan Powell, we're able to keep KJ Tenner, and then Monty Hansberry's a sophomore. Buck Harris is a sophomore. And let's not forget, we have 3, count them, 1, 2, 3 McDonald's All-Americans coming in to join the program next year. A lot of young talent is going to be on this basketball team with a really good coach, Darren DeVries, at the helm. So people probably didn't expect us to make the tournament once Tucker got injured. Looks like we're on our way there. but that's only the tip of the iceberg of what this team can be, especially if Tucker does come back as he's expected to next season as well. I agree, John Wolf. We could beat Utah and UCF. BYU, that's going to be a tall task. They're playing as good as anyone in the conference right now, but not saying it can't be done. Not saying it can't be done by any means. Trey says this will be the perfect time to come up clutch. BYU is the hottest team in the Big 12. Agreed. And Utah is arguably the hardest atmosphere in the NCAA right now. We could upset a lot of people. That would be awesome. That would be great to see. Hey, Drum Wolf, appreciate those kind words. It's the best WVU channel on YouTube, man. Hey, thank you. Thank you. Can't thank you enough for that one. There's a lot of guys that do really good work within the WVU space, and I got to credit them as well. I just try and keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, but I hope that, when you come here, you get something a little bit different. And I feel like you do, because I watch the other shows as well. And I feel like we all kind of have our lanes that we fall into, and you get something a little bit different from each one. But I think the one thing that I do a bit different, and this isn't to knock on anybody else, it's just the channel members here get, I think, a lot of different bonus content that I haven't seen other, channels do, whether it's the film reviews or, the monthly hangout stream, stuff like that. I think those are kind of original to us here at the CRW within the WVU space. And that's why I always can't recommend, channel membership enough if you're someone that just can't get enough content and stay up to date on football and such enough, because you get a lot extra stuff there that you don't get on the main channel. And it's really the catalyst that keeps things going here as well. And can never thank you guys enough for that, but really appreciate those kind words, Drum Wolf, for sure. Hey, Trey Edwards agrees. Apparently, he says that's the only membership I keep. I love this channel. Thanks a lot, Trey. And speaking of you guys that are channel members, coming up here, probably more post-spring football, because there's going to be a lot to cover during spring. We're going to get into, our film reviews, our game rewatch commentaries, which last year, during the spring and summer, we went back and rewatched the entire 2023 WVU football season, and I provided my commentary for the games. Obviously, going back and watching last year is not going to be very beneficial for us this upcoming year with a whole new staff, essentially a whole new roster. So instead of going back and rewatching WVU film from last year, what we're going to do for channel members this offseason is we are going to go back and we're going to watch Jack State film. We're going to watch Rich Rod's offense, try and learn a little bit about the scheme before we see it in the fall. We're going to watch Oklahoma defensive clips, learn a little bit about Zach Alley's defense, and of course 2023 Jack State defense, and watch a little bit about Zach Alley stuff. So that's something channel members are going to get. And also we're near the end of the month of February, which means first week or two of March, you guys that are there at the Almost Heaven level, member hangout stream coming soon, where just kind of we hang out, no designated topics. We'll share funny videos, funny clips, not even WVU related, just talk about whatever. Like I said, no dedicated topics. It's just kind of our chance to hang out with you guys at the Almost Heaven level, give you guys a look behind the curtain, and just kind of chill a little bit. So that'll be coming out in the near future as well. Be on the lookout for that, you guys that are channel members. And like I said, those game rewatches, looking at the film from Jack State and Oklahoma and stuff will be coming over the summer as well. And then, of course, once we get into the season, you'll have your player grades stream each week, your snap counts, and I'll be doing film reviews as well. But can never thank you guys enough for that. And Eric Flowers, this is a great comment to end on right here. He says, yeah, they need to pay Coach more and build the statue already so he stays. Hey, the one good thing about it is it seems like this go-round we aren't, saying no to his requests, right? That's why he left the first time. We wouldn't give him the money for the assistants. This time around, we're giving him all the money for the assistants. Go get the highest paid assistant in WVU football history with Zach Alley. Go get the big names in the transfer portal. Go get the Cam Vaughns, the Jamori Robinsons, the Michael Coates. And of course, we're going to give you money to keep our players as well. So I love that comment right there, Eric Flowers. Well said, man. And I hope the wins come right away in 2025, but we're going to keep you up to date in the lead up to the season as we progress through spring football. More practices to come, and there'll be more basketball to talk about in the near future as well. So keep it locked here by hitting the subscribe button if you haven't already, so you can stay up to date on this Mountaineer coverage. And be sure before you head out, whether you're watching this live or on a playback, take a second, take your thumb if you're on your phone, hit the back button out of the live chat if you're in here live, hit that little thumbs up button. Or if you're watching the playback, you just got to scroll up and hit that little thumbs up button right there below the video. It's crazy, but that really helps a ton. This will find more Mountaineer football fans like yourself if you just do that one little thing. And if you didn't get a chance to chat live, throw your thoughts in the comments. I always appreciate those interactions, and I'll try and respond there in text form as well. But I'll be back to talk to you guys again in the near future. As more news comes out and such, I'll be back to chat with you guys again. But I appreciate you guys, tuning into this one. Hope you guys have a good rest of your day here. As always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.